everybody, I'm Lori Petro. Welcome to another episode of Teachable Moments. This is a place where I show you how to connect with your kids. How do we get kids to connect and cooperate and calm ourselves in the meantime? Today we have a very special guest. This is actually someone that if you've been with me for any length of time, then you probably remember Hunter. She was one of my very first guests way back, like 9 years ago when I first started Teachable Moments and my weekly videos. And she is an accomplished parenting teacher and author of a best-selling book, Raising Good Humans. And now she has a new book out, which we're going to talk about today, Raising Good Humans Every Day. So we're going to bring Hunter on in just a few minutes. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her book. That's a screen one. Okay, so this is Hunter's first book, Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. You guys know that is right up my alley. One of the things I'm most passionate about is that. So Hunter's here. We're going to bring her on in just a second. So this is her first book, but let's show you her new book because she has a new one out, and that's the one we're going to talk about today. Raising Good Humans Every Day. This is her new book, 50 Simple Ways to Press Pause, Stay Present, and Connect with Your Kids. So I love this, and I think what I love about this book most inside, you guys, is the chapter titles. I have so many different notes that I was writing down, but I love because they're super easy to flip through, like a guidebook for us. And this actually, it is, well, we're going to let Hunter describe it, but it seems like a guidebook follow-up companion book to her original Raising Good Humans book. But what I love about it is how it's so great to flip through for a particular challenge, and then you get that actionable insight right there, because not everybody has time to read. Like, we all love to delve into the theory sometimes, some of us, but other times a lot of us just need actionable tips. And that's what I love about this book, is that it gives you really simple, short, concise, this is my problem, and you'll recognize it in the chapter titles. And then you go through, you get a little bit a story, you get some science, and then you get that actionable strategy that you can take away right away. So that is the book that we are going to discuss. All right, let's stop this screen. So Hunter Clarke-Fields, as I said, you guys, you remember her from one of our old Teachable Moments videos. She is a mindfulness mentor, a mindful mama podcast host, mom, global speaker, and #1 best-selling author of Raising Good Humans. And like I said, she has this new book, Raising Good Humans Every Day. And this is coming out. You guys can pre-order it. It's coming out August 1st. I believe it's going to be available on all the book selling places, but we'll let Hunter talk about that. So Hunter has over 20 years experience in meditation and yoga practices, and she helps moms bring more calm and family cooperation into their daily lives. She is a mindfulness meditation teacher, the creator of the Mindful Parenting course and teacher training, and has taught mindfulness to thousands worldwide, including a recent trip to Egypt. Wow, she's like been all over the world. And I know she was like way far down under, or maybe that was in like the Middle East somewhere. I know Hunter's been all over. She's like world traveler. So without any further ado, let's bring Hunter in. I believe that she has been able to hear all this. Let's see. Add your stream. Let's do it like this. Hi, Hunter.
Hi, Lori. So nice to see you.
Welcome. It's so good to see you. Are you hearing feedback? I'm hearing feedback.
Oh, you are.
Is that just me? Let me
headphones,
see. So. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just background noise, do you think? I don't know. Let me just check all my... I think it is.
Okay.
It might be me.
Testing.
Hopefully the recording will block all that out. It's okay. Sorry, it's technology. We just go with it, right? No matter what. Yes. Hi, it's so good to see you. Thank you for doing this on such short notice and deciding to come on and share all about your new book. It was super fast. I saw you come online just last week, right? And I've been sort of just like out dealing with lots of family stuff, and when I saw you, I got so excited because it just kind of brought me back to, I don't know, the good old days when we had little kids. And now our kids are little, right? And now they're all big. How old are your kids now?
I came to your house. I was like, oh my God, I get to meet her.
Oh,
wow. I was so excited.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny because it's just like, I had like a 6-year-old or something at that point, and I was just so passionate about what I was doing that like anybody who wanted to come and talk, I was like, sure, let's do this. Even though it was probably... Wait, I have a picture. I have to share this with you because I thought it was so funny. Let's see. Do I have it up? Okay. I'm going to share. Okay, there it is. You're looking at, I love the way that you're looking at me because she's like, have I made a good decision? No, just kidding. But it's like hilarious. So we're right in front of like the fireplace. There's like a Santa statue in the back, even though I think it was like March. So I don't know what was happening there. But there we are 9 years ago. Self-care solutions with Hunter Clarke-Fields. You can go look up this video on my website to get more of Hunter after this if you want. But I just had to share that because I thought it was adorable and hilarious because just that I happened to catch like when I opened it and found like us, it was like there was that screenshot and I was like, that's perfect. I have to do that.
I'm giving you the sus look.
I know. It's just so funny because there was like so many mishaps even on that day. There was like construction or noise outside that we had to pause for. But let's talk about your books. So you had your first book, Raising Good Humans, sold over 200,000 copies. Congratulations. What a huge, amazing accomplishment in the parenting world because there are so many books people can choose from, right? And I think that's really special to have poured your heart out into a book and had it do so well. It's just amazing. And maybe that's what I read last. It may have even been more now, but is this a companion book? Is this a guidebook? How would you describe Raising Good Humans every day?
I mean, I love the way actually you described it, how it's like super actionable. You don't have to read through the whole thing. You can just dive into where your problem is. Yeah, I mean, my idea was like I'm super inspired by like books that I get to read like a little bit every day. And so actually initially I pitched to the publisher like a 365 day, like one a day, and they were like, that's a lot of pages. Maybe we could do something a little shorter.
Because then you might need 2 or 3 for each day, right? At that point.
I'm so grateful that they suggested we do a little less because I can't imagine myself having gone crazy. But I love this because, yeah, the ideas, with Raising Good Humans, I really wanted to hone in on like the very most practical things I found, like all those mindfulness tools to calm our reactivity and those skillful communication tools, right? Like both of those things, I felt like these were like the most essential things. And I had like one chapter about your home and kind of having a peaceful home. But I've done the Mindful Mama podcast for 10 years. I've talked to so many guests. I've like learned so much about a lot of different things. So then with this book in this format, I get to like kind of do a little short chapter that's like 3 or 4 pages and you're done with the chapter. It's great. And just dive into whatever challenge you're working on. So I I mean, as a podcaster, I get books from people. Sometimes I get like these like 300-400 page tomes. And they may have great information, but it's just too much. You just have no sense of accomplishment. You're never going to get through it. And I know, and I feel like that's like one of my skills is to take something that can be complex and have a lot of research and all these different things and like distill it down into like the most essential information to make it really practical and like you said, actionable, like just to really be able to take it and go with it.
Yeah, super. Like when I was writing it down, I put down, it's a short summary of conscious parenting touch points, because that's what I love is that you really touch on all these little pieces. Like we know we have to have that communication skill and we know we want to be mindful, but there's so much work to do before we can actually actualize that in our lives, right? And that's kind of what you go through, all those really important touch points. And then, but what I love what you do is you share the story that makes it really relatable. And then you share some science from all over, which is probably what you're talking about. You've interviewed so many different people, so there's so many different pieces, and you pull them all into this book. And then it's like then you take that actionable insight from whatever that science or that touch point was. But what was it that made you want to like connect these 2 books together and not just write something totally different? Like why do they have that same, what made you want to like write this book in particular, I guess, and have it connected?
Well, I think, I mean, for me, I need my lessons again and again and again and again, right? Like, so I want to approach us. I want to approach some of the same ideas from many different angles, because that's, for me, is the best way I learn something, right? Like, I need to hear it from so many different sides, so many different stories. Like, I do the teacher training program. You mentioned that in the beginning, and I love that because I review again and again and again. And it, like, selfishly, it's so great for me because I'm like, oh yes, like, let me like go over win-win problem solving and iMessages again. Like, this is so helpful, and I really need that. And so, so I wanted it to be a companion piece. I did want to reiterate some of the same like touch points that are so, so essential. And then I really wanted to just be able to expand on it and just like into that, like our homes, our schedules, our mindsets, some of the wonky ways we think about some things, like I get to touch on some of those things in here that are just might be like just slightly adjacent or tangential, you know what I mean? So I get to kind of follow all these little tangents, and I feel like they're all really important. They're all places where I've had ahas, like, from all kinds of different teachers, like about, downtime, about how I'm thinking about my kids. Like, there's like chapter 45 is called Love More, Care Less. And that comes from something Dr. Shefali Sabari said at a talk I saw her, and it just stuck with me for years and years and years. And I thought, it needs its own little piece, right? And like all these like kind of little practices. So it's like 50 simple ways, and that's the ideas.
And that's what I want to touch on, because I know that when a lot of parents hear the word mindfulness or meditation, which you really, especially in the beginning of the book, I know that you really emphasize different ways to do it. You make it so relatable for those fidgety parents, as you say. So it's not something, I don't want anybody to be like, more mindfulness. No, because this is really accessible. And like you said, like even the most fidgety of parents, you can bring this into their practice, which I really loved. Why was that? And no matter how many times they failed, because I think people try meditation, like they'll try once or twice and they're like, oh, it's not for me. And then they'll never do it again. What practices would you say are for those fidgety parents? Because we kind of know why it's important. But what would you say is the one practice that a fidgety parent can really take away?
Well, I understand us being fidgety. Like, that's a natural human state. And for parents, we're so anxious. We got so much to do. It is really hard to like get into that going zone and then slow it down, right? But the problem is then we're doing all this stuff. We're planning. We're doing the logistics. We're getting it all done. And then finally we get to our Cancun vacation and we're like, now I'm going to be able to relax. And we can't. Because we have trained our brains to always, always be going. So it really, really is imperative, right? Because you can't love your kids in the future or the past. You can only love them right now, so it's that important. It comes down to you actually being there for your life, for your kid's life, right? For these whatever 900 summers or Saturdays we have with them, right? 18 summers, 18
when you
summers.
Reduce it like that, it's so real. And my daughter's 17 now, so I'm like, I keep looking back, going, I'm literally physically turning myself around because it blows my mind every time. But I'm like, that was it. I got like one chance, and that was it. And every year that went by was a chance for me to make sure I was repairing, make sure I was staying in that moment, because that was the only, I really realized, especially as the years passed, how very important that cliche is to hold on to, because it does go fast. And you talk a lot in the book about, you share a lot of your own personal struggles and stories, and about you said that you're highly sensitive. And I think there's always that fine line, right, between sharing too much of ourselves and then being helpful to parents too. But you balance it so well. Why was that important for you to include your personal struggle, and maybe not just make it parents that you've worked with, because you've obviously worked with tons and tons of parents that you could have used their stories? Why was that important to you?
Well, I think because, one of the things I think that has helped raising good humans do so well is that I wasn't an expert in parenting. Like, I wasn't naturally great at it. I was kind of naturally bad at it. I was
Yeah.
it was horrible. I was terrible. And as far as, certain moments, they were really bad. And I really had to struggle. And I really do have a temper. Like, I still work with that. Right. And so, I come from a place of like, I really, really understand how hard it is. I'm not naturally like super great with I don't have a lot of patience. I have a lot of energy. I'm quick temper and things like that. And so like, even when you think about like the fidgetiness, I've learned to do sitting meditation now. And now I think it's funny. Sometimes people are like, oh, Hunter, you're so calm and peaceful. And I'm like, wow, it's amazing. Because it's not like, it's something that's sort of has happened over time. But like that fidgety thing, when I used to bring my kids to this Montessori school that's like kind of like a short walk away from the house. And it was like when they were really little, it was 3 days a week for 3 hours. And so that 3 hours went by so, so fast. I mean, literally, you're done. You have to go pick them up. And I would literally run home from drop off. I would be like, okay, I gotta get home.
Make the most of that time.
I got a lot to do. Yeah. And then I realized like, oh, like, when I do that, like I'm feeding my anxiety. I'm feeding this energy of not enough time. Like whenever our body, and now I know that whenever actually our bodies, when we hurry at all, our nervous system registers that as a threat because, why would you hurry in the natural world with no clocks and times if there wasn't a threat, right? The only reason you would hurry is if there was something wrong.
And it gives us the energy, and when we do need to hurry, it gives us the energy, right? That stress response actually provides the adrenaline that if we did need to hurry, we could do it. So it's like these are natural responses, but we don't need to turn them on in the way that we do every day.
And ultimately, like the stress response, it actually cuts off access to the slower parts of our brain. It makes us more anxious and less able to focus and have steadiness and peace and all that. So I decided I'm going to walk. I got to practice when I'm preaching. I am going to practice mindfully walking home from drop off. And it was so hard. That first couple times I was like, I'm just slowly walking and I'm breathing. I'm like, oh, I can feel the like itchiness in my fingers and my toes. But I did it. And as I practiced that, it did actually take me a few minutes longer to get home. Not that much longer because it wasn't actually that long, far away. But the weird thing is that I got more done and I felt more relaxed. And then I was more present at pickup because I wasn't like racing to fill every second. And I got more done. It's like this weird thing when we slow ourselves down, when we carve out a couple of minutes a day, like which I know we have because we're on social media, right? A couple of minutes a day to stop and slow ourselves down. It's kind of a weird paradoxical thing in that actually ends up giving us a little more time in our days, and because we just are more spacious about everything.
I love that. That's exactly it. And this is absolutely true. I'm a long time 20 plus year meditator, building up from that. I can't sit still for more than a minute. What am I trying to do to like 20 years, 25 years now, actually, if I don't meditate for 30 minutes, like meditation for me is like going to the gym for some people. I'm not good with the going to the gym. I'll walk now. But meditation for me gives me that high that some people walk out of exercise with. And the fact that I could sit still and get to that place. And if I don't do it in the morning, at least like start my morning, if I don't do at least like a short morning meditation, I'm so much more inefficient during the day. It's crazy, but it's so absolutely true. And I just know this firsthand. And I have been, I've built up over the years, but I don't think you have to be like a long time meditator to feel those immediate benefits, because it gives you that spaciousness to when something comes in, it doesn't like immediately throw you to the end of your tolerance, right? And then you have no more space to deal with anything. Yeah. It actually builds I love the way you put that. It builds space in your whole body so that all the little things that come in, you have more room to deal with them. And then you actually can, instead of getting sidetracked for 25 minutes from something small, you deal with it, and then you have all that space to do whatever else, while your kids. Oh, I still remember those days when it was such a short time. My daughter also went to like a co-op preschool in the beginning. It was like 3 hours, but it was like, 15 minutes to drive, and then it was like all that extra time, and it would cut in. It would really only be an hour and 45 minutes by the time I was done. It felt like
Yes.
way back those were the early days of meditation for me too. But you talk about this, the words come in, that internal dialogue comes in and says, you got to get home, you got to get it done, you only have this much time, or telling us that we're not good enough. And I know in part of the book you touched on this, and kind of how the self-help industry will say, well, you have, if you're thinking different, then everything in the outer world will be different. And you're like, well, I'm thinking different, I'm trying to think different, but the thoughts are creeping in. Where does that fit in? How do you combat that maybe in the moment? Do you have any of those 50, one of those 50 tools to help for that? Because I know you talked about that, and how you, sort of, not that you overcome the habit, because I think it's something, like you said, it's a practice that we're always working on. We're not, some perfectly calm people all the time. But what would you say your tip is for that, when that self-talk creeps in and you're like, the guilt or whatever it may be stops us?
Yeah. And the reason this is so important is because that inner voice comes out with your kids, ultimately. When you're squeezed, that inner voice will come out. And, I remember seeing, I've had my own experiences with that, where I've inherited, toxic thoughts about herself that I inherited from my mom, and then saying kind of the same things, like saying to myself in the mirror, oh, I'm so ugly, because I heard her say that, and it's like not throwing my mom under the bus. She's actually very like self-aware person, but very cool, but like it's so important, because it's to interrupt those thoughts. Like what you're thinking inside matters a lot to how your kids are in the world. And I love a great practice from Russ Harris, who's the founder of the ACT therapy kind of modality. And what is important to understand with this is that, like, the mind thinks just as the ears hear and the eyes see. This is just what it does. It's a black box inside your skull, right? And it's getting sensory information, and it's trying to predict the world and keep you safe. And so the mind has all these thoughts in order to just keep you safe. And they aren't things you choose, right? No one, chooses, like, it's not like you're like, oh, I would like to just think terribly about myself or project horrible futures for my child. Like, that's not what we're trying to do. But what I love this practice from Russ Harris, and it really is basically a mindfulness practice, and it's about interrupting that pattern, because pattern interruption is just like, that's the key to it's not like we want to just shove it away. We want to acknowledge it. So what happens, say you're having a thought, I'm a terrible mother because I lost out my kids. If you're having that thought, what you can do is just put the phrase. First, you have to be aware of it, right? First, you have to actually hear it, right? So that takes a little bit of mindfulness to be able to hear it. But then once we hear it, we can put the phrase, I'm having the thought that, in front of that thought. So we say to ourselves, I'm having the thought that I'm a terrible mother. And that's a whole different ball game. As soon as we put that phrase in front of it, we're like noticing it, we're interrupting the pattern, and then it's not something that we believe. It is the truth with a capital T, and we have to act upon immediately, right? Like, that's how it is when we're like under the waterfall of those thoughts. And when we say, like, I'm having the thought that, we kind of step in front of that waterfall, and then we're like, oh, these are words in my head. It's not like the truth. These are words in my head, and is this helpful or is it not? Then we can start to deal with it. When we can get that tiny little bit of distance from it, it changes the game completely.
Yeah, I love the script of depersonalizing it in a way, and saying, just like what we would do with our kids, I can observe that they're having feelings about something. I like the way that you put that, and it sort of takes it outside of us having to own it and live it and embody it and use it as information to go, oh, okay, well, what can I do with this now that I know that this is happening? Then where it gives you that next step. It's like a step to the next level of mindfulness that we want to, which is then maybe to take care of the regulatory system, our nervous system, and start to regulate after we sort of get ourselves out of that mind loop of self-talk. One of the things that I love that you talk about, because for me it's so important personally, is compassion for others, for the self. And I remember, this is one of the very first things that I remember about talking to you in the very beginning, was it was always about loving kindness and showing yourself loving kindness. And that's sort of how I think of compassion as well. What does compassion and self-compassion represent for you? How does that connect to parenting? And I know that you have something in the book that you call the self-compassion break. So if you want to maybe tack that on to the end as
Sure.
well.
Yeah, I mean, I think of self-compassion as a very practical tool, just like all the other things. Um, you know, we kind of live in a society where we're very judgmental and harsh on ourselves. I think it comes from the whole, traditions of, the society. But ultimately, like when we're harsh and mean to ourselves, it kind of leaves us like sad and debilitated. For me anyway, like as when I was telling myself I was a terrible mother, it was like, well, where do I go from there? I'm just incapacitated. I can't do anything. And then I'm actually kind of in a selfish loop in some ways, because all I'm doing is I'm in this having this pity party for myself, and then we can be harsh and judgmental on ourselves for that even too. So self-compassion is just this very practical recognition, like you're human, you're gonna make mistakes, like that is part of the deal. Like you cannot get an 4.0 perfect score. It's like
Parenting 4.0.
the best you can do is good enough. And so you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be human. And so what is the best way to respond to your inevitable human mistakes? Well, if you're harsh on yourself, you're incapacitated, and then you're not very, very present for your children. But if you offer yourself some compassion, if you can, offer yourself a soft landing, if you can say, okay, that was hard, that stank, that was not a great moment, but whatever. I was like hungry, and I'm gonna try again. And this is hard, this parenting thing, right? If we can talk to ourselves as we might a good friend, then it's easier to kind of get back up and begin anew, which is exactly what we need. Because like parenting pushes us. If we're gonna try to grow and learn and change, we're going outside of our comfort zone. Again and again and again. We're gonna make mistakes again and again and again. Like if you're gonna learn new communication skills through Lori, through myself, or whoever, like you're gonna make those mistakes. You're gonna then start to recognize, oh, look at all the terrible habits of the way I'm speaking. You're gonna see all those, right?
That comes up in the beginning a lot, right? There's a lot of guilt that comes out when you start to notice what you're doing or how you might be acting in the everyday. And it's not just with our kids, it's in everyday life. Like I had to show myself a little self-compassion just there because I thought I muted myself when I had to cough, and I didn't mute myself in time. So I coughed over you, and then I was like about to go into a judge shame spiral right there. I was like, pay attention to Hunter, because that's so not important. And I was able to bring myself back. But it's in the everyday, it's not just with our kids. It's a lot of us got a lot of shame when we were growing up for little things, for just making mistakes or living, or like that coughing at the inappropriate moment instead of taking yourself out of the situation or something. And then we live with that. And then when we make mistakes, as we grow up as teenagers and whatnot, we don't give ourselves a lot of compassion. So if you are a parent or, a person, caregiver or teacher who did not receive a lot of compassion for mistakes, it might feel like it's inappropriate to give yourself space to make mistakes or to give children, that space. But especially, I think, just talking about ourselves, that is just so, so important to recognize in everyday life for that. Did you tell us about the self-compassion break?
No, but
okay,
and it's super practical too, because we want our kids to learn self-compassion, right? So if we can be compassionate with ourselves, they're gonna pick up on that, right? And we're gonna also be more compassionate with them. But the self-compassion break comes from the researcher Kristen Neff, and it's very, very simple. And you just basically say to yourself, you recognize what's happening. Like, this is a moment of suffering, just being aware, or this hurts, right? Oh, this hurts right now, whatever that mistake is. And then you say to yourself, like, basically you're going to remember that you're not alone in this, that this happens to everybody hurts. Remember the REM song? Anyway, yeah, like that. So this,
Go back to our teenage.
you might say to yourself, okay, suffering is part of life. I'm not alone, and we all struggle. Like, you remind yourself of that. And then in the third step, you might just say something kind to yourself rather than something harsh to yourself, so that you can, again, very practically get up and begin anew again, right? And so you might say, like, okay, may I be kind to myself, right? Like, this was hard. Everybody deals with this. Or may I kind of be nice, be kind to myself? May I give myself some compassion right here? And that's it. It's super simple, but it's just a way of, again, interrupting those old patterns, which they arise, okay? Hello, judgment, old friend. I see you there. Hello. And then you say, okay, instead of that, may I be kind to myself? Even Hunter makes mistakes, even Lori makes mistakes. It's true. They're not just playing. It's actually true. Everybody
Lots of mistakes with our kids.
With our coughing and our musing.
It's so much. I know. How much judgment even we have around ourselves for just like everyday, things that, like, a cough is a normal, something that has to happen. And yet I could, sit and judge myself about it. Or just, we get embarrassed about things that we do because we think other people then are going to think, oh, there's so much. And I know parents, there's so many voices. There's so many, TikTok, pediatricians, people, podcasts, books. It's not that it's not all helpful, but sometimes it gets in our head and makes us feel like we're not doing the right thing. And again, I think that's why I really enjoyed reading this book, because you didn't have to wade through all kinds of theory and understanding. It was just very, like you said, practical. You wanted something that people could really reach into. What kind of shifts or mindset perspective changes do you hope that parents take away from your book, or both your books?
I mean, what I hope that they can shift, there are a couple things that I want to help people shift from. If people are still sometimes we go into parenting and we have very high expectations for kids with underdeveloped brains. That's kind of a historical remnant, right? That we think that 4-year-olds can control their emotions, right? Or something like that. Yes. I want, it's all, a lot of this is what is peppered through Raising Good Humans Every Day, is like how to kind of shift our expectations for our kids. Like, just let's back down our expectations for perfection for ourselves, but also for our kids, right? Like, let's understand that our brains are developing, we're mistake-making creatures. And let's also kind of shift, like, the way we think about discipline and learning, right? Like, kids, to discipline, the root of the word to discipline is to learn, right? A disciple is someone who follows a leader. So what do our kids need to learn in those bad moments, right? So shifting from that mindset of, I have to disincentivize bad behavior, to what is my child need to learn? That's a big thread that runs throughout that. And I feel like we are in a time of transition away from that, culturally, and kind of learning about the brain and learning about the nervous system and learning about what's actually effective, right? And so
I hope that we're making it. It feels like the trend towards using punishment is not letting up. I feel like sometimes we live in a bubble. And how do you
did you watch the Shiny Happy People documentary? Oi.
Shiny. Oh, that's next level. I mean, that's even extreme, right? So there's like levels of sort of what we do to control and sort of take agency away from our children. How can we, like, how do you believe we can best shift those social norms and those cultural understandings about children towards a more neurobiological understanding of the body and the stress systems in child development? How do you think, or how do you support that in your world? What do you think are some of the ways that just everyday parents can do that?
That's what I hope to do in the books. I mean, it takes like there's lag time, right? Like it takes like 20 years for something to like be discovered in research and then to kind of get into popular culture, and maybe longer in parenting because we are just repeating what our parents did with us, right? So
Yeah,
who
the
knows?
generational shift might
It's
take a
like a
bit.
whole thing. But yeah, I mean, I want to be part of changing that mindset because it was a mindset I had to shift in myself, and I could recognize, at first I remember thinking like, oh, I met a family who didn't do timeouts, and I was like, oh, I would never, not that I'm not gonna have my kids run
I read
crazy.
that in your story,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh wow, because you just never know like how long someone's been. So it's not that I was like surprised, but I was like, oh, look at her with the yes, of course. And you know what? I remember before I had children, my sister had a daughter, and I didn't even know like what I was talking about at that time. But I was like, so I'm right there with you. It's like amazing how once that shift though then happens, was it like I'm never going back for you?
Yeah, I mean, I never have ended up using. I mean, I think maybe I used like a couple of timeouts when early on with my oldest child, but
But you
yeah,
couldn't see yourself not doing it. That was what I do remember you saying in the
that was
book. It was
surprising.
almost
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And then I didn't. I ended up learning and not ending up using any timeouts, any punishments. My kids are 16 and 13 now, and they cooperate with me. Like, yes, I have to cajole them sometimes to do their chores, but that's like pretty normal for a teenager.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
you'd have to do that anyway.
You'd might have to do that with roommates, right? Like that's just kind of how life is. Um, and we get along well and we listen to each other. We're in relationship with each other and they talk to me about a lot of things, right? So I feel like I'm super grateful I was able to make that mindset shift because doing that work in the front end with my children has had these great payoffs, like as they've been older and teens, because our relationship is really easy and great. Like there are other problems, like because bigger kids have bigger problems and there are stuff that happens, right? But it's not about our relationship and the parenting piece. Like that part is easy now. So I want to encourage people into that mindset shift and to help them really trust the science, help them really trust what the experts say, what people say, and say, even if their own culture, I want to be part of like the culture that they can touch to that is saying like, no, it's okay, you can trust this. It will quote unquote work in the long run. And also I want to help them like, understand that their needs as a parent, like if you're reading this as a mom, you give this as a gift to other moms when you want to say to them like your needs matter, your ease, your peace, your relaxation matters. It matters for you to be a great parent, but it also just matters because you're human, right? And there are ways to practice that in the midst of a busy life, and you don't have to fill every day with tons and tons of activities and things. You don't have to like do all this stuff and do that big vacation and do all this stuff to get an A+ as a parent. Like you don't have to achieve to be worthy as a parent. Like when you realize your own worthiness in yourself and you realize you're worthy today, right now, to rest, to take it easy, to breathe and relax, and that is actually what your kids need most from you is you being able to rest, be at ease, and then take delight in them. Like then you have the capacity to handle all the inevitable challenges, but you also have the capacity to be able to enjoy this precious, time that goes by really fast.
I love that. I was going to say, what would you want to leave parents with? But I think you summed it up so beautifully, because like being able to sort of rest or be with your children and not having to, and I know we're all busy and we have jobs, we have things that we have to do, but in those moments where you're not doing that, where you're actually just with your children, to be really present with them, I think is one of the greatest gifts we give them and ourselves. Just as you said, as they grow, it has paid you back
And
over and over in the relationship that you have with them now.
And I want to add that it doesn't have to be like all the time you're with them either, right? Like,
right.
There is research that shows, like, that good enough parenting research, like there is research that shows like the most attentive parents, the ones who are like doing the best in the research, like they were like fully attentive to their kids 30% of the time, So like, it doesn't have to be 100% of the time. You don't have to like stop what you're doing every single time your kid wants to talk to you. But like when you can, sure, stop what you're doing. Turn your body to them. Give them your attention. Give them your eyes. Put down the phone. Close the laptop lid, and give that to them. But yeah, and yeah, it doesn't have. You don't have to be perfect at it. You have permission to be human.
We are not saying dedicate your every second to your children. Conscious, not perfect, I always say. But absolutely, this is not about giving over our lives so that we can be there for our children. It's just when we are there for our children, yes, are we really, really there with them?
Yeah. How can you love if you are not there?
Well, there is so much in this book, you guys, that I have like notes for days and days, but we don't have all that time to do. So you're going to have to go get that book yourself right now. You can pre-order it. Hunter, where can we get the book?
Actually, they're sending it out early, so like,
they are.
Order it. Yeah, like not everywhere.
Pre-orders are going well.
I don't know, but the pre-orders are going. Like people are texting me, like I got my copy, and I'm like, they are not supposed to have gotten it yet. I don't know what's going on.
August 1st was your release date. Are you doing? But like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, we can
anywhere you want.
Your website you can go to. Can you get on your website?
Yeah,
as well?
I mean, I just link to Amazon and IndieBound and whatever. So
I'll put links for everybody down below for sure. When are you doing anything special for your book release, for your book launch?
Yeah, actually, we're having a party in New York City.
If you're in
around the New York area, you can go to my website, mindfulmamamentor.com, and there's like a banner that you can get the link to sign up. We only have like less than 20 seats left. So
when is it? Is it on?
It's on the 1st, and we're giving away books. The publisher gave me like a bunch of books. I have to sign them all this week. And we're giving the first 50 people t-shirts that say "Raise Good Humans Every Day" in the same font as this.
I love it. That's awesome. You guys can get some swag. You can get free books. There's only 20 seats left though, so I will. I'll make sure to get this up on YouTube and all the relevant places before the 1st, so that if anybody else wants to grab those tickets and the book and the t-shirt, they can do that for sure. Thank you so much for doing this again. It was so great to have you. I think I again could talk for days about this book. It was so lovely to just have those really actionable strategies, but really touch on things that are important, because I know people hear all the time, oh, we have to be empathetic with our kids, we have to be compassionate. But like, what does that mean? What does that look like? How do I get there if I'm not compassionate, if I'm not regulated? What do I do? And Raising Good Humans Every Day will outline that for you. So go get it if you're watching. Hunter, I hope that you'll come back and share with us again when you do your next amazing thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lori. I really, really appreciate it. It's such an honor to talk to somebody who is my teacher and was such an inspiration to me. So I really feel completely honored.
I'm so humbled by your words, because I feel like we were growing up together doing this with little kids that we were testing out this. Well, guess what? We're not going to use any punishment with these kids. Let's just see what happens.
So true. So true.
I love it. And for everybody watching, thank you so much for being here. Make sure to subscribe, hit notifications so you know when we are live again with another teachable moment. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Lori.